Sometimes accidents occur in an instant, which changes our lives and the lives of our loved ones forever.
And at times like those, we are called upon to give of ourselves in ways that we never imagined.
That was the case with Meredith Alexander and her daughter Schuyler, and they're joining us now from Florida. Hey, Meredith.
Hi, Schuyler. Thank you both for joining us.
I want to thank you for inviting us.
So, to begin, let's go back a few years to 2016. Schuyler, what was your life like at that time?
I love to travel. I went to 5 out of the 7 continents. I had just graduated from Yale, and I was very interested in social enterprise. And I had danced for ever since I was 5. So I was a very active person too.
And Meredith, what was your life, 5 years ago?
I was just like any given single mom, entrepreneur, and Schuyler was traveling the world, literally. Just about every month it felt like she was in some exotic location around the globe.
So, Schuyler, you graduated from Yale in 2015, and the next year, you're on a post-grad fellowship to Peru to build schools and work with the indigenous people. And what happened then?
So the first weekend in Peru, I didn't know anyone, and I signed up to go on a camping trip, which was crazy because it's 14,000 elevation just above where we are just starting. So at the climbing, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Because normally you're supposed to take a couple days to adapt. But I just went straight into the hike, and I just went straight into hiking, which was not smart.
I want to hop in and say that Schuyler is definitely the daredevil in the family. She was the one who would, if I asked her what she was going to be doing that day, oh, we're going to be rappelling down a waterfall that is treacherous. So she was absolutely fearless. Fearless.
And Schuyler, it was with that fearless spirit that you signed up to go rafting in a remote part of Colombia. Tell us about that.
I was whitewater rafting, and we got through the treacherous part, and we stopped to swim in a grotto, which meant we took our helmets off, and there was a cliff we could jump off of into the water, but in order to get up there, you had to climb single file up. So I jumped, and we think the second time we went up, the person in front of me dislodged a boulder, and it fell and hit me in the head and knocked me off. So I broke both scapulas, my spine got a traumatic brain injury, my lungs were filled with blood. I fractured my right femur and pulverized my left ankle.
That's horrible, Meredith. And with Schuyler so far away, how did you first know something was wrong?
February 19th, 2016 started out like a normal working Friday for me in the middle of my busy season. And ironically enough, at about 11 or 12 a.m., for no reason, I started feeling absolutely exhausted. And so I tried to fight that off. I threw water in my face, but I just kept yawning, and it was as if my body was pulling me to go to sleep. So I went into the bedroom, set the alarm, put an eye mask on, and I thought, okay, 15 minutes, and then I'm back up and back at it. That was around noon. At 3 p.m., my eyes popped open. I don't know what happened with the alarm, but I bolted up. I looked at the clock. I was horrified, ran downstairs to walk the dogs, get a glass of water, and the phone rang. And it was an international number. I almost didn't pick it up. And this little voice on the other end of the line asked first if it was me. And when I said yes, she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Schuyler's been in a terrible accident. The doctors are working on her right now. We've got to get you down to Columbia right away. And as we kept having this conversation, I finally had the courage to say, is there a chance that she's not going to make it? And that silence for a moment at the end of the line, I will always remember. And then she just said, well, the doctors are in with her right now. We just have to get you down here as soon as possible. And I hung up the phone and collapsed on the floor. And so the whole whirlwind began. What moments before had been complete calm was now total chaos, and trying to figure it out along the way.
Wow, how challenging was it for you to get on a plane to Columbia in such short notice?
The entire trip to Columbia was an adventure that started right in Tampa. We got to the ticket counter with our carry-on luggage. We had no checked luggage. And the American Airlines representative said, I'm sorry, we can't sell you a ticket. It's our company policy that if it's less than an hour from departure, we cannot sell you a ticket. We had to drive to Miami. So we had a 4.5-hour drive to the Miami airport. And so my other daughter and I get on this plane, and as we were zooming there, in the darkness, I realized that I may not be able to control the outer game, but I sure as heck could play a mean inner game. I had to get a place where my expectation was that other people had seen miracles. Why not us? Why not us? So the first question I asked myself was, had anyone ever achieved something that other people said was impossible? And of course, clearly the answer was yes, because I was flying through the sky in one of those impossibilities.
Can you describe what it was like when you arrived in Columbia and saw your daughter for the first time?
So when I got to that hospital, I was a force to be reckoned with. I was not a second victim of this boulder. I was there to guide the team, right? I was there to guide anyone and everyone who might be thinking of Schuyler, to not think of her as someone who is not going to make this, but to remember how formidable she was, what an incredible energy she is.
And you still held on to hope even after you saw the x-rays of her skull?
When we first were shown the x-ray of her skull, it was crazy because it looked like I was seeing something that would be in the Museum of Natural History somewhere. It was devastated.
And yet, from almost the time you arrived, there seemed to be miracles occurring.
The first miracle had already occurred, and this was that in Colombia, South America, very few of the hospitals even have an ICU, much less a team that would have been capable of working on her level of injuries. However, not too far. Now, mind you, it took an hour for them to get her from where this accident occurred to this ICU. But there happened to be an ICU there. Also, in that town, the former retired lead surgeon of neurosurgery at the University of Bogota, he had retired to this little town because of the number of motorcycle accidents there. So he was available to work on Schuyler and had been working on Schuyler. So that was miracle number one.
And finally, you're there in Columbia with your daughter. She's in bed, the curtains pulled back. What did you see?
She did not look like the young woman that I had seen only a few weeks earlier at Christmas holidays. They had shaved all of her hair off. She had a bandage all over her. And yet, to me, my first impression, because of where I had worked so hard to get my thoughts, she looked like this beautiful hybrid between a China doll and Mother Teresa. And the bandages seemed to form a little heart in the middle of her head. And so it was a shocking moment to see her, but it was not a moment that felt like it was breaking me. I knew that we were going to make it through this. I just knew it.
So from that point on, you refused to entertain any thoughts that you might lose Schuyler.
When I was talking to the doctors in Colombia and they were trying to express the severity of what we were facing, it was apparently, because her skull had been cracked open and the brain had been exposed, typically that was the kiss of death. No one expected her to make it, but if she should make it, because of the location of the devastation, you could see from the x-rays that she surely would be blind. And so I was still, at this point, I was focused that she was going to make it and everything would be fine, whatever that meant. There were so many people who were in terror that she was not going to survive. And I believe, from what I had studied, that if they were focused on her not making it, then they were feeding that energy. So that is where I really began on the Facebook posts, believe it or not, because that was the only way to reach people. So we created our page, Sky is the Limit, spelled like her name, SCHUY. And I would put out there these posts that were not, oh my gosh, pray for Schuyler. It was, no, if you want to support Schuyler, if you want to support us, then you go out and you find a way to be that epic version of yourself. You go out there, smile at people in the elevators, live your dreams, be joyful, and that is how, live the essence of Schuyler, right? And so it went very quickly from 100 people reading the post to them sharing the post. And all of a sudden there were thousands of people who didn't know me, didn't know Schuyler, who were messaging me and telling me that our story, Schuyler's courage and my vision had changed their lives. And that's when I started to really believe that there was some purpose behind all this.
So, Schuyler, during all of this, you were in a medically induced coma. What's the first thing you remember after you woke up?
The accident happened on a Friday, and I was airlifted to Miami the Monday afterwards. And my eyes were taped shut and my mouth was wired shut. So I just squeezed my mom's hand to let her know I was awake. So that's my first memory.
And Schuyler, you were having to learn the very basic things of existence all over again. What was that like?
My circumstances have changed a ton because you don't realize how many things you do standing up until you can't stand. So even like brushing your teeth and stuff, you do standing. But that's how I figured out and then taught. There are multiple ways to do everything, but I've learned to appreciate little things and the people, because after the accident, you realize how important people are.
I had no full appreciation of what an impact Sky had made in just 22 years, really until after the accident, because so many of her friends reached out to me and said, I want to visit, I want to come to Miami. And I was shocked because every single one of them had this same story of Schuyler changed my life.
Schuyler, you have not stopped smiling since we began this interview. Now, given what you've been through, how do you stay so upbeat and positive?
I'm able to maintain a positive attitude by looking at little victories. Little victories are still victories, are still steps forward.
What's left on your travel bucket list? Where do you want to go next?
I always wanted to go to more of Southeast Asia. I've been to Bali and Nepal, but I want to travel around. I heard Vietnam's really pretty. I want to go there. I also want to go to Morocco. I think that'd be cool.
So Meredith, seeing how far Schuyler's already come, I'm sure you see her living independently, right?
The future going forward for Schuyler is really, in the word, unstoppable. I know that Sky will, sooner rather than later, be sharing her message, making that even bigger thumbprint, that legacy on the world, and helping other people to realize that even when these frickin' boulders fall, that they do not come to destroy us. They don't come to destroy our big dreams, our plans. They come to destroy the things that we have been allowing to hold ourselves back.
And Meredith, why do you believe it's so important to make the efforts you're making to share Schuyler's story?
My big hope is that by hearing our story, is that anyone who hears it will have the courage to believe that it's not in spite of these boulders that we achieve amazing things, but that it's that boulder version of ourselves that help us create that epicness that was inspired by these awful boulders in our life.
Wow, that was absolutely incredible. Thank you both so much for being with us.